China is quietly building cities inside single buildings. In Hangzhou, an hour from Shanghai, more than 20,000 people live at one address. Not a neighborhood, not a city block, one building. Regent International rises 206 meters, curves in a giant S, and holds nearly 1.5 million square meters of floor space. That's bigger than 200 football fields, stacked vertical. You can be born there, go to school there, work there, get sick and see a doctor there, buy groceries, get a haircut, swim laps in an indoor pool, eat dinner at one of dozens of restaurants, and sleep in a studio the size of a parking space. All without stepping outside. Some residents go weeks without seeing daylight. Some go months without leaving the building at all. This is no luxury high-rise. Rent starts at $210 a month for a windowless unit. The people who live there are young tech workers, online shop owners, and a massive population of streamers. So many streamers that locals gave the building a nickname, the Internet Celebrity Building. Regent International wasn't supposed to be this. It was designed as a 6-star hotel. The plan collapsed. Developers carved the interior into thousands of tiny apartments and opened the doors. What walked in was an experiment no urban planner would have approved on paper. And it stands alone only in scale. China has been running housing experiments that make Regent International look cautious. A district north of Beijing houses between 400,000 and 700,000 people in pure residential towers with almost no jobs or shops. Commutes run over an hour each way. Locals call it the sleeper city, because that's all people do there. In Changsha, a developer announced a building that would have beaten the Burj Khalifa, 220 stories, 838 meters tall, housing 4,500 families, plus schools, a hospital, offices, hotel rooms, and vertical farms. The plan was to build it in 90 days, using factory-made steel modules. Regulators killed it a week after groundbreaking. All 3 projects stem from the same pressure. China urbanized faster than any country in history. Hundreds of millions of people moved from villages to cities in less than 3 decades. The state housing system collapsed in the late 90s. Developers scrambled to build at a scale and speed the world had never seen. Some of those experiments worked. Some produced the largest residential community in Asia, and some produced Regent International. When you pack 20,000 lives into one building, the consequences take time to surface. The design came from Alicia Liu, the same architect who led Marina Bay Sands in Singapore. Regent International opened as residential in 2013. The building sprawls as much as it rises. Shopping centers, food courts, grocery stores, hair salons, gyms, swimming pools, hospitals, and schools connect through skywalks and bridges. Elevators run constantly. The building counts as 36 floors on one side, 39 on the other, depending on where you stand. Daily life inside runs on technology. Residents use facial recognition to pay for noodles, unlock doors, and check out at convenience stores. Cash is optional, so is leaving. The convenience is the pitch. Rent is cheap because the units are small. A studio with no window costs $210 a month. A unit with a balcony and actual sunlight costs $560. For young workers in a tech city where housing eats half a paycheck, that gap matters. Regent International filled with exactly the population you'd expect. People starting out. People running online businesses from their phones. People streaming 12 hours a day who need bandwidth and a bed. Nothing more. The building became a vertical village. Neighbors recognized each other in the hallways. Restaurants knew regulars by face. A subculture formed. For a while it worked. Then the psychological cost showed up. Living in Regent International means living without external cues. No sunrise. No weather. No seasons if you're in a windowless unit. Time blurs. Residents describe the feeling as living inside a casino or a spaceship. You lose track of whether it's morning or midnight. Your body stops knowing when to wake up. The shut-in effect gets worse the longer you stay. Some residents said they started ordering food delivery even though restaurants were 3 floors down, because leaving the unit felt like effort. The lack of sunlight compounds it. Windowless studios trap you in artificial light, 24 hours a day. Your circadian rhythm collapses. Mood drops, energy drops. You feel isolated even though 20,000 people live around you. The building is full and you're alone in it. That isolation creates space for problems. Regent International's open design meant anyone could walk in. The building had no central security screening, no gate, no single checkpoint. Thousands of units meant thousands of renters, subletters, short-term guests. Tracking who lived there became impossible. Unregulated businesses opened in residential units. The building's reputation shifted. In 2021, Hangzhou prepared to host the Asian Games. The city formed a task force to clean up problem buildings. Regent International landed near the top of the list. The crackdown came fast. Police moved through the tower and made arrests connected to prostitution. Landlords and subletters faced fines. The internet celebrity building became the scandal building overnight. The reputation damage stuck. But reputation wasn't the only concern regulators had. Fire safety is the nightmare scenario urban planners raise when Regent International comes up. Packing 20,000 people into one structure with capacity for 30,000 means packing 20,000 evacuation decisions into the same few minutes. If fire breaks out on a middle floor, everyone above that floor has to move down through smoke and panic. The building has emergency exits, fireproof stairwells, sprinkler systems, but no one has tested an evacuation at full capacity. No one wants to find out what happens if the system fails. Chinese regulators studied the building closely after it opened. The scrutiny didn't shut Regent International down, but it shaped what came next. No developer has tried to replicate it at the same scale. The experiment ran once. Urban planners split on what Regent International represents. Some see it as a preview. Cities are getting more crowded. Land is getting more expensive. Building up and packing amenities inside makes sense if you can solve the safety and psychological problems. Regent International is version 1. Future versions could be better. Others see it as a warning. Humans didn't evolve to live like this. Density has limits. Cross those limits and you get isolation, crime, and buildings that feel like prisons with room service. Regent International crossed that line. China's other housing experiments show what happens when you swing the opposite direction. Tiannongyuan sits north of Beijing in a district that didn't exist before 1999. When China's state housing system collapsed, the government needed replacement housing fast. Developers built Tiannongyuan as pure residential capacity, tower after tower after tower. Between 400,000 and 700,000 people live there now, making it the largest residential community in Asia. Tiannongyuan has almost nothing else. No major employers, no entertainment districts, no central commercial core. It's a sea of apartment buildings where people sleep and nothing more. Locals call it the sleeper city. Residents commute over an hour each way to jobs in central Beijing. They leave at dawn. They come back after dark. The community feels empty during the day, packed at night, and dead on weekends when anyone who can afford to leaves. Tiannongyuan solved the housing crisis by creating a different problem. You can't live a full life crammed into a vertical tube like Regent International. But a functioning city can't be built from bedrooms alone. Tiannongyuan has space and sunlight. What it lacks is any reason to stay. Regent International and Tiannongyuan represent two failure modes. One tries to cram everything into a vertical tube. The other sprawls horizontally and offers nothing but walls and a roof. Both experiments ran because China had the will to try things that would never clear a planning board in Europe or the United States. That same will produced Sky City. In 2013, Broad Sustainable Building held a press conference in Changsha and announced a tower that would rewrite the skyline. 220 stories, 838 meters tall, taller than the Burj Khalifa. Broad Sustainable Building had credibility. A few years earlier, the company assembled a 30-story hotel in roughly 2 weeks, using prefabricated modules built in a factory and stacked on-site like Lego. The construction videos went viral. The company's pitch was speed and efficiency. Skyscrapers didn't need to take years. You could factory build the pieces and snap them together in months. Sky City was supposed to prove it at record scale. The building would house 4,500 families. It would include schools, a hospital, offices, hotel rooms, and vertical farms. The entire structure would rise from factory steel modules in about 90 days. Broad Sustainable Building broke ground. Media covered it. Architects debated whether it was visionary or reckless. Then regulators stepped in. About a week after groundbreaking, officials halted construction. Broad Sustainable Building hadn't secured full safety and environmental approvals. The project required reviews that the company either skipped or assumed it could bypass. The halt became permanent. Sky City never rose past the foundation pits. Those pits filled with water. Local villagers reportedly started using them as fish ponds. Sky City died because even in a country willing to build faster and bigger than anywhere else, there are limits. Regulators had studied Regent International. They had watched Tianong Yuan. When a developer proposed a building taller than anything on Earth, assembled in 3 months, housing thousands of families in an untested modular structure, the answer was no. The foundation pits are still there. You can visit them. They're a monument to ambition that ran past approval. The pressure that created Sky City hasn't gone away, though. China's urban population is still growing. Housing costs in major cities are still rising. Developers are still searching for ways to build faster, cheaper, denser. Regent International is full. Tianong Yuan is full. Somewhere, another experiment is being drawn up. The real question is what gets built next, and whether the next version learns from the 20,000 people living at a single address in Hangzhou. Regent International is still running. The crackdown cleaned up the illegal businesses. The reputation took a hit, but the building didn't empty. Rent is still cheap. Young workers still need affordable housing in expensive cities. Streamers still need a place where $560 a month gets them a unit with a balcony in a tech hub. The building adapted. Security tightened. Management started tracking sublets more carefully. Life inside kept going. What changed is that no one else built another one. Developers looked at Regent International and saw the risks, the reputational damage, the regulatory scrutiny, the fire safety concerns that never fully go away when you house a small city in a single structure. The psychological toll that doesn't show up in architectural renderings but shows up in residents after 6 months of windowless living. The business model works if rent stays full and nothing goes catastrophically wrong. That's a narrow margin. So the experiments moved in different directions. Chengdu built the New Century Global Center in the early 2000s, a structure with 1.7 million square meters of floor space. It held the title of world's largest building by floor area for a while. Inside, an indoor artificial beach, a wave pool, an ice rink, a movie theater, offices, hotels, and shopping. Residential was off the table. People visited. They didn't live there. The designers learned that a massive mixed-use complex can sidestep density problems entirely if you never ask people to sleep there every night. Other cities tried modular construction without the extreme height. Prefabricated housing blocks went up across second- and third-tier cities. Entire apartment towers assembled in weeks, not years. The construction method worked. The buildings stayed normal height, 30 stories, not 220. Broad, sustainable buildings' core idea survived, even though Sky City didn't. The vertical farm concept that was supposed to fill Sky City's upper floors found a different home as well. Smaller urban agriculture projects started appearing in Shanghai, Shenzhen, and Beijing. Indoor farms built into warehouses and low-rise commercial buildings, growing lettuce and herbs under LED lights in controlled environments. The tech worked. It just didn't need to happen on the 100th floor of a super-tall tower to make sense. The lesson developers took from Sky City wasn't that ambition is bad. It was that ambition needs a safety margin. You can build fast, you can build tall, you can build dense. Attempting all three at once on an untested structure housing thousands of families is where regulators draw the line. Regent International cleared that bar, barely. It opened before regulators tightened the rules. It filled before anyone fully understood the psychological cost. It survived the crackdown because it was already full, and evicting 20,000 people creates a bigger problem than managing them. The building exists in a narrow window. Built 5 years earlier, and China's construction boom might not have been ready for the prefab techniques and integrated systems that make it possible. Built 5 years later, and regulators might have blocked it outright. Timing made Regent International possible. Timing and a willingness to let the experiment run even after the problems surfaced. That willingness is what separates China's approach from nearly every other country. When Regent International's crime problem hit the news, the response was a crackdown, not a demolition order. When Tianong Yuan turned into a sleeper city with brutal commutes, the response was better transit links, not a halt to dense residential zoning. When Sky City's permits fell through, the response was a construction stop, not a blanket ban on modular supertalls. The experiments get monitored. They get adjusted. They rarely get torn down. The result is a built environment that includes both successes and warnings. Regent International is both. It solved the problem it was designed to solve, housing thousands of people affordably in a high-cost city. It created new problems no one anticipated, among them isolation, crime, and a shutdown effect that turns convenience into a cage. Urban planners in other countries watch these experiments closely. Singapore studied Regent International when designing its own high-density housing policies. European cities dealing with housing shortages referenced Tianyuan as a case study in what not to build. American architects debated Sky City's modular approach in trade journals even after the project died. China built the prototypes. The rest of the world is deciding which lessons to take. Would you live in a building where you never have to leave?